We are back, our viewers. The life and times of Gatu Mbaria, are like a thriller story. And writing the book on the big conservation life, which is actually the untold story of wildlife conservation in Kenya, was a tip of the iceberg. He had been daring before. And so we want to hear from him, being a journalist for over 20 years in investigative journalism at a time when there was nothing like going viral. Maybe he'll tell us his biggest story, his most daring story, and a price he paid for writing some of his stories. Because he walked away from wanting to be seen and heard to wanting to make a difference for this continent and for this nation. Mbaria, turudi kwa your storytelling, the gift of storytelling. Now, you knew that you could tell stories, but then you started poking the bear, or is it the tiger or the leopard in Kenya? What is the most investigative story you've done that entailed another courageous maybe person tipping you off on a story, and what happened with that story? You can pick one of many.
Thank you. Yeah, in media, right from the very word go, I chose to write on conservation simply because I had a background in ecology and could understand the issues. So the secret was how to translate these issues in a way that can create human interest. So what we call humanizing the stories. Now, for me to do that, I encountered a lot of issues, a lot of hidden goings on, which I wanted to expose. And I remember there are many stories that I wrote. But one story which I remember is how British businessmen, Kenyan businessmen, senior people in government, senior people in the World Bank came together and colluded to take over all the money-making ventures of the Kenya Wildlife Service. Now, to give a bit, to contextualize this, we are talking of national parks that make money, bandas where visitors go to spend nights, and around the time, which was in August 2004, KWS was making over 800 million shillings. So all these money-making ventures were to be handed over to British businessmen. And the head of that outfit,
They're called cartels these days.
the head of the cartel was a very prominent conservationist who died several years ago. His name is Richard Leakey. We named late Richard Leakey. And his counterpart in the British, in Britain, was Andrew Hind. Andrew Hind purported to run an outfit called Wildlife Cafes, which was to be the outfit that was to run all these money-making ventures. And there were very big, rather famous names in conservation who were involved. So I remember one guy, I think it must have been, it was in the morning, I can't remember when, in August 2004, somebody calls me, tells me, I have a big story. Can you come over? So he tells me the story about how these guys had colluded with the World Bank and businessmen in Kenya, senior people in government, and everything was to be done with the help of one of the biggest banks in Kenya, which was actually part and parcel of the whole scheme. So I got to meet this guy, and he tells me the story. But I tell you, Nation Media Group is a rather conservative media house. Unless you have documentary evidence, there's no way they're going to publish that story. So he gives me a document of the concept, the overall concept, what they had planned, how they had planned to take over this money-making ventures. So I go and write the story, and it hits page 1 in the East Africa, in the Daily Nation, which is the biggest paper in this country. Now, before the story was published, the most senior editor at the Nation, this is the editorial director, looks at the story using a tooth comb. He calls me to his room, a very big office, his office, yeah, and tells me to sit there. So he's looking at every word, at every phrase, at every sentence, and he's asking me questions because Nation, being a conservative media house, is very much afraid of being taken to court because usually they are given fines and they pay a lot of money, and they didn't want to do that. So eventually he allowed the story. It hit page 1, and for the next 2 weeks, other media houses pick it up, and they are talking TV stations, radio stations, and all that because it was a big story then. Now, after that, the conservation cartel sent someone who was a friend, or rather he tried to befriend me, to come and inquire how I got the story, where I got the documents. And of course, in media, you do not reveal your sources. So I didn't tell him my source. But I think over less than a month later, somebody in Britain writes to me, tells me we are doing a climate change story book. We are doing a book on climate change, and we want you to be our fixer. And for the next 2 weeks, she was a lady. She sent me to all manner of places. Go and talk to so-and-so, go and talk to so-and-so, and then tell me they are going to be paying me every day some huge amounts of money. I think it was about $150 a day. So they entice me with the money. And they tell me, at some point you need to book an aircraft, a fixed-wing aircraft, which the door can be removed because somebody will be coming to accompany you from Italy, a photojournalist. So I start wondering whether the deal is too good. Think twice. So what is the connection between the story I did and this very good deal and the book? So I contacted a friend who had actually given me the information.
The informant now.
Yeah.
The patriotic Kenya.
Yeah. Who knows how these people operate. And he tells me that this is a trap. One, you're supposed to look for an aircraft whose door can be removed so that you can photograph. You're on top of Mount Kenya, you're on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, you two and the pilot. What do you think this guy is going to do? I started becoming suspicious. Thank God nothing happened. The guy came from Italy. I know I don't want to reveal his name, but I still remember his name. I still have all the emails they wrote to me. I think one day when I'm old enough, I'll do my memoirs and I'll tell the story. But that in itself was quite scary because I ended up running away when he came. I didn't meet him. I was supposed to book a room for him at the Stanley Hotel, which I didn't do. And the places that was being sent by this first, I didn't even know this lady who wrote to me an email from Britain, and she talked with me like she knew me, and she's sending me to all manner of places. Go and meet somebody. So all the people I was to meet were whites in conservation. The same people who belong to this cartel, the conservation cartel. And were it not for that guy, I would have gone along with the scheme. I would have gone along with but I was a bit green because that was in 2004. I started writing in 2000, so it's about 4 years. If it is today, I would sniff that from 2 kilometers away.
Because you've been in harm's way before.
Yeah.
At one point, Mbaria, you become an activist. A story that almost consumes you, and you end up in exile. So there's that story, and then there's a story where you find yourself on the streets. And the reason why I want you to probably share the stories that you're comfortable sharing is because a lot of journalists think it's a walk in the park when you rattle the snake, when you shake the tables. Tell me about any of those two experiences. And like the first one, you're very green, but now you're all in and you're fighting very powerful institutions by your storytelling.
Maybe I can tell the one that I ended up somewhere along Wayaki, I think, just close to Nyayo Stadium. It was in the evening, and I had actually interviewed somebody at the numerical machining complex. This is the complex that made the first car. It was called Nyayo Pioneer Car. So it's a huge concern owned by the government, which not many Kenyans know about it. Yeah, I think it has the capacity to produce a lot of steel for this country. And mind you, we have steel in Kitui, we have steel in parts of Meru, and a lot of it. So, no, not steel, but iron ore, which can actually be converted to steel. So this outfit wanted to be manufacturing steel for the SGR, standard gauge railway. So somebody told me about the story, and I wanted to do the story. And I thought this was a very good story because you had to use a lot of steel, which we actually used from China, I think. I think somebody didn't want me to do the story. So after I interviewed the then acting director, and in the evening, I wanted to go to around 7 p.m. I wanted to go back to where I lived, which is Ongatarongai. But because there was a big jam, I thought rather than just stop there and sit in the jam, why don't I just walk?
What are you carrying?
I was carrying a camera, I was carrying a notebook in a small bag, nothing else. I even had some money here and my identification document. Little did I know that somebody was following me. Before that, I would receive calls that were strange, and I didn't know who was calling me. Then I got pick the call like this, and the guy just cuts it off. So I didn't know why they were calling me. Shortly before I crossed over on my way to the Nyayo Stadium, I didn't know what happened. I think I don't know how long I was in the trench. When I woke up, I asked myself, where am I?
Did you hear someone hit you?
I didn't hear anything. So I start crossing the road. Then all of a sudden, I feel cold. It's like there's a lot of water. Then I touch my chin like this. There's blood all over. When I cross the other side, to the other, I saw some policemen, traffic policemen. They had a vehicle. I told them, Aki mimi nimegongwa. Now the effect of the blow was now, I was now feeling it. So I pleaded them to take me to the hospital. They refused. Somebody, a Boda guy comes, so sees me, blood is all over, and he feels pity. So he asked me to climb onto his motorcycle and takes me to a friend, Samuel Deuri, who was his office was just close to Wilson Airport, And from there, I'm taken to hospital. Then around the time I almost collapsed, I'm puking all over. I don't know what the effect. I'm puking all over, and it's like I'm having dizziness. When I reached the hospital, this was Nairobi Women Hospital, Gatarongai. I was given a wheelchair because I couldn't stand. Only to realize after scan was done that my skull was cracked. Thank God, my brain did not mix with blood, because if it did, I would not be alive today. So I was admitted for 5 days, so many stitches. Somehow I recovered and went on. So what this means is that the story was not published. My camera, they went away with it. My notebook, they went away with it, and the small bag. I had money here. If it was normal robbery, they would have taken the
And
money.
you had a phone.
I had a phone. Yeah.
They didn't take the phone.
They didn't take a phone.
So your storytelling is sweat, blood, and tears. Now, when I told you about what I'm doing and the people that I want to interview, you shied away from the term heroism. When I talk about untold stories of African heroism, yet he is a border guy who rescues you when the police clearly has more power to rush to the hospital. But I want to look at some of the things that you have done that I look at as just courageous, like going back and even being able to write this book after you've had that near-death experience. So a prophet has no honor in his own home. I'm curious from our guest today, what is the price of heroism? He doesn't look at it as heroism. He has just told us a story, a horror story of being clobbered in the head because of a story that he's carrying in his head, in his notebook, and in his camera. And the person who I consider a hero in this story is not just him for telling the story, but also the border guy who sees another human in pain, and the police don't help. Is this a recurring thing in a world where kindness is endangered now? So we want to find out from Barry if he's paid to tell the truth. There is a story that you covered that saved Kenya some money. We won't name the company, but what is it they got in Kenya, and how did that story go?
Thank you. One of the things that I would actually shy off from describing myself, I'm not a hero at all. It's not about heroism. It's about seeing the truth. I started by telling you that I couldn't see evil, couldn't hear any evil. I was telling feel-good stories until I met this woman, and I'm here. I think it's how you feel after encountering the destitution, the deprivation of the people who are supposed to be benefiting from the resource, as far as all life is concerned. That you start now feeling that you need to tell the story from their own perspective. You need to tell the story to point out the wrongs. Now, whether somebody considers you to be courageous or not, it's not about courage. I tell you, like when things happened to me, I was as scared as everybody else. But I couldn't stop going on because it's something that I felt I needed to do, and I needed to keep saying in writing. So the story you talk about, Kenya is a country with immense amount of resources as far as natural resources are concerned. But because we are not schooled to look into ourselves, we are not schooled to look at what we have. We are told to, it's like school education tells you to close your eyes as far as you are concerned, as far as your environment is concerned, but open them and see the horizon. Don't see what is down here. If you remember, people who went to school in 60s, 70s, 80s, I think, we were taught in geography classroom that Kenya does not have minerals, apart from soda ash in Lake Magadi and diatomite in Kariadusi. only to realize later that Kenya is one of the countries in Africa with the greatest amount of mineral wealth. So among other things is that we also have vast biodiversity and a lot of plants, animals, microbes, enzymes that we can use for industrial purposes. There's this story I did, I think it was in 2001, about some microbes that were stolen from Lake Bogoria, the Jesus. These were enzymes, they are called extremophiles. Extremophiles because they are able to survive in extreme environments. So they were scooped from where the Jesus are, and also from Lake Nakuru and Lake Elementaita, the Great Rift Valley lakes. Somebody, a Kenyan, a Kenyan scientist working in Kenyatta University, was a local partner. The other researchers were from UK. So they got this material and they sold the material to a company called then Genenco. Genenco sold the material to Procter & Gamble after cloning the material. This is the material that was used for stonewashing jeans. Before then, you waited for your jeans to get old, for it to fade and to have that look that rough and all that. So now they had the material which was cooked from Kenya, and a new jean can actually look like an old jean. And at that time it was a fashion. The other material they got is for making some detergents. In the family of Procter & Gamble has a lot of detergents under the name Tide. So each year, the company was getting between $3 and $4 billion from that material. Not a single shilling came to Kenya. 1 shilling. So I write the story, and I also realized some lawyers in the US who do work on pro bono basis to help poor communities and poor countries under the acronym PIPA, I can't remember what PIPA stood for, decide to help Kenya.
As a poor country, when someone is making billions.
Yeah.
Wow.
To make a claim so that we can get a share of that. But what does KWS do? Under the same leadership who belong to this wildlife cartel, conservation cartel, they refuse to pursue the matter. But much later, maybe out of embarrassment or something, Kenya gets $21,000 which is a pittance. I mean, if you look at the amount that the company was getting. But yes, we told those stories. They are on record. Maybe sometime, somehow, somebody is going to pursue that, and probably we are going to get our rightful share as a country. Yeah.
Because you see, the people in that around those lakes are now the poor, the so-called poor people.
Mm.
But the products that are coming from there are being made into a multi-billion industry.
Yeah.
And then you look at Africa and you still say the poor continent. Because I think we are poor in our hearts or in our spirits. So now the audacity to tell these stories, for me, the why, the cost of telling the story, where do we go from here? Because we have to agree the younger generation are very good at showing what the work they've done. And before this book, nobody probably would have known who Mbaria was. So this book was a game changer. You've written articles for over 20 years, and from the interviews that I've had with you, it would appear a lot of those stories are life-changing, really, in terms of the communities that you highlight, their plight, walking away from this luxurious holiday, the Shaba, because you've seen the Samburu woman. Where do you want to go with your storytelling from here? You've learned all the stories, you sweat, blood, and tears. Where do we go from here with Gatu Mbaria?
One of the things I'm most interested in is mentoring young people who are interested in knowing the truth about their country, young people who feel some sense of patriotism and some sense of, yes, I am in this situation where we have inherited problems, poverty, maybe destitution, the fact that we do not manufacture, we do not own even our resources, to take them through a learning exercise. I'm not sure, I know young people, if a lot of them, if they are exposed, if they get to know, they will actually be interested in some of this, because this is not about yesterday, it's about the future. Because there are many of them, they live in school, the resources are immense in this country, the resources the resources that define Kenya today are in the hands of other people. And here they are, very innovative. You go to a university like JKU, and you see the kind of things, the kind of technology they churn out. These are very innovative young people. If they can only realize that you can actually innovate from what we have, from the resources that we have. You can actually innovate to exploit the resources that we have. I think there's a need to marry what they are doing today, the interests that they have, in a way that with the facts as they are in Kenya, so that even if somebody is always on TikTok, Facebook, and social media, is actually starting to realize, yes, I live here, I'm not a Mzungu, I'm a Kenyan, and I really want to do something about this. What can they do? They're very sharp, they're very bright. We use the written word. These are people who can actually even come up with an app that will pinpoint a resource, and somebody, a short video pops up from and somebody is able to watch the video from their phone and see, oh, so this is Isiolo, or this is a cultural, a shrine, and Mzee comes out and there's this three-minute video. So they are very bright people who can actually now, if they only knew that Kenya is one of the richest countries as far as mineral resources are concerned, so that they can actually have a connection between their situation today, how it was yesterday when we were colonized, all through the 60s and 70s, and how they can actually think about how to alter that, because the future belongs to them. The future does not belong to us, the future belongs to them. So how will Kenya end up in 50 years' time? It depends on the brains of the young people who are living today. So I would like to mentor, I'd like to keep telling these stories, and I also hope that one day I'll be able to do several documentaries on the stories I did, and also maybe another book or two. Yeah.
I hope I'll be a co-author in one of the books. It is a privilege to be able to talk to Mbaria. You only have to read what he writes to know how talented he is. One of our late politicians, Karisa Maitha, said he hopes a child will be born that will save Kenya. I think these sons and daughters of Africa already exist. It's only for us to know how to tap into the work they've done. There's no need of reinventing the stories that have been told, it's just to revisit them. So Mbaria's 20 years of investigative journalism has exposed a lot of rot that we can go back and fix. And we'll stop the narrative of how poor we are. Like he's saying, the young people need mentorship. And so my encouragement to Mbaria is, let's catch up with technology. You are a creative, you're already thinking of very attractive looking tools that we can use to pinpoint exactly. We will continue to have conversations about specifics about the environment, climate change, because activism does not just have to be about violations of rights. When we violate our environment, when we are exploited as a nation, then we need to raise young men and women who are the sons of Africa, who, like Mbaria, are going to right the wrongs of Africa. It is a joy and privilege to host Bwana Mbaria. I hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Asante sana.
Thank you.